How a Ukrainian raid on the western part of the Crimean Peninsula might give them the chance for a major strike on the headquarters of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, and how did Ukrainian forces manage to pull off a complex and dangerous amphibious raid in Sevastopol, previously considered an unimaginable assault. New circumstances allowed for this successful attack. Before the attack. As any operation of this nature that carries significant risks, the planning for the raid on Sevastopol began months in advance. Ukrainian intelligence operatives gathered information on the location and strength of Russian forces in the targeted area. They also identified potential landing sites and escape routes. Ukrainian authorities would need to carefully weigh the potential gains against the risks involved. This would require sophisticated reconnaissance and espionage efforts, as well as a careful plan, coordination, and execution. Once the intelligence was gathered, Ukrainian military planners began to develop a detailed plan for the raid. Special units were more than necessary for this assault. Ukrainian forces would need specialized units trained for such operations, including amphibious assault forces and naval support. There is some evidence to suggest that the troops involved in the raid may have been trained by British Royal Marines. We know that they spent over 6 months instructing around 1,000 Ukrainians in the art of commando raiding and complex amphibious operations, which might have led to the successful strike. What's also worth noting is that the Ukrainian Special Operations Forces took drastic preparation measures. This involved training on amphibious assault tactics, using explosives, and operating in hostile environments. The commandos also practiced the raid itself multiple times to ensure that it went smoothly. During the attack, on August 24th, a few hundred elite commandos arrived onshore via speedboats, targeting the Russian radar stations Nebo M and Kesta 2E2. These are the primary radar stations responsible for monitoring from Crimea to Kherson, detecting aircraft, drones, and incoming missiles. These were the very assets upon which Russia depended to protect Sevastopol. By destroying these radars, it created a vulnerability for potential missile strikes in the region. The Ukrainian Special Operations Forces landed at a remote beach and proceeded to the targeted radar stations, situated on a hilltop overlooking the city. The commandos used explosives to demolish both radar stations, and the resulting explosions were significant enough to be seen and heard from several miles away. Following the destruction of the radar stations, the commandos withdrew to their speedboats and evacuated the area. The escape from Sevastopol was executed with the same daring and precision as the raid itself. The commandos skillfully navigated their speedboats to evade Russian patrols and safely return to Ukrainian-held territory. After the attack, the Ukrainian amphibious raid on Sevastopol represents a significant development in the war in Ukraine. It demonstrates that the Ukrainians possess the capability to carry out complex and perilous operations, even when facing a superior enemy. This bold action underscores their willingness to take risks to achieve their objectives. Furthermore, the raid is likely to have a profound impact on the ongoing conflict. The destruction of the Russian radar stations has created a vulnerability in Russia's air defense network, rendering it more susceptible to Ukrainian airstrikes. Additionally, the raid sends a powerful message to the world that Ukraine refuses to back down in the face of Russian aggression. While it remains challenging to predict the course of the war in Ukraine with certainty, the raid on Sevastopol suggests that the Ukrainians are gaining the upper hand. Their confidence and capabilities are growing, while the Russians appear to be losing morale and effectiveness. Possible scenarios include Ukrainians launching further attacks on Russian positions or the Russians attempting retaliation. However, what is clear is that the conflict has entered a new phase, and the Ukrainians find themselves in a significantly stronger position compared to just a few months ago. The gap in Russia's air defense network could allow the Ukrainians to conduct more airstrikes against Russian targets, including naval assets in the Black Sea. This may also embolden Ukrainians to push Russian forces out of Kherson and other parts of southern Ukraine. Nevertheless, it's unlikely that Russia will passively accept these developments. They might retaliate with missile strikes on Ukrainian cities or increase troop deployments in Ukraine. While a negotiated settlement is a possibility, it appears unlikely for now, as both sides have shown a reluctance to make substantial concessions. Ultimately, the outcome of the war in Ukraine hinges on various factors, including continued Western support for Ukraine, the morale and effectiveness of the Ukrainian and Russian armed forces, and the political will of their respective leaderships. What's next? Ukraine has launched another missile attack on the port city of Sevastopol, following a previous strike on the headquarters of Russia's Black Sea Fleet in the occupied Crimean Peninsula. Ukraine claims that dozens, including senior Russian Navy commanders, were either killed or wounded in the attacks on the naval headquarters in Sevastopol. During a speech at an international conference on Crimea in Kiev, President Zelensky declared that Crimea would be deoccupied, just like other parts of Ukraine that are unfortunately still under occupation. However, Russia has shown no intention of relinquishing control over Crimea, which it has used as a launchpad for missile strikes against Ukrainian targets. Moscow argues that a referendum held after Russian forces seized the peninsula demonstrated Crimea's desire to be part of Russia, a claim vehemently denied by Ukraine and much of the international community. While it's premature to draw firm conclusions, it's worth noting that more than 6,200 Ukrainian soldiers have received training from Germany, and many others are undergoing training with support from the US and various other countries, including Norway. Norwegian soldiers, for instance, are training Ukrainian artillerymen in the operation of the M109 tracked self-propelled howitzer at a training area in Germany. These efforts to train Ukrainian artillerymen on howitzer usage are part of security assistance packages provided by their respective countries.